welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Nirmal Bangham, Hiral, Dadia. We have with us Colin Shah, VC at Gems and Jewellery Export Promotion Council. Uh, Colin, overall, the kind of impact that we've seen with regards to COVID-19 is huge. And it's not only on the health side, but also on the economic perspective. And it's not only India. I think no one is spared out of this. What's the sense that you're picking up overall, firstly, if you have to actually draw a larger picture?
Um, Hi, Hiral, and thank you for inviting me on this program. The broad level sense that we are getting, obviously, it's a disaster, and the lockdown is going to impact every business, and even our business will be massively impacted. I think in the short term, in the long term, things will be fine. None of us know what that long term will be. There's all kind of discussions whether it's going to be a V-shaped, U-shaped, L-shaped recovery, whether it's 3 months, 9 months, 12, 18 months. Who knows, right? So having said that, so let's break this up at a macro level, and we have the American market, which is I would say the largest market for all exports. Then you have China, you have the Europe region, you have Gulf, and you have India. So broad level, I would say those are the five regions which account for, I would say, 90% of the business done for our industry out of India. So US, the East Coast is badly affected, but the West Coast is coming back a little. So there's been some amount of opening which has happened in the last 1 week to 10 days. And we're seeing that the demand is at 20-30% of what it used to be normally. So that's coming back. The e-com business is actually doing better if you compare with the same period last year. So, that's happening for sure. In Europe, the Eastern Europe part is less affected than the Western Europe part. So even the Eastern Europe part demand is, coming back a little bit. People have started going back to work. They've started, going to the malls, the shops. So that's happening. In the Gulf region, we had the same shutdown, and Dubai and most of the Gulf has just reopened a week back. So it's still early time, so can't really say.
Correct.
But the only green shoot right now for our industry is the Chinese market. So China has come back from the lockdown, and there's this vengeance, luxury shopping happening there. So people are back in the malls.
Correct.
You take the large retailers like a Chow Tai Fook, or their business has started coming back. So that's happening for sure. And
Right.
then lastly, you come to the Indian market. So India is still in the midst of the lockdown. We've barely opened, and it's been a week since some states and some cities have opened, and we are seeing some amount of business happening, but it's too early to say yet.
Right. So if you could just help me understand, since the lockdown to now, because if you have to only look at the domestic market, what's the kind of estimation you think you have? What's the quantum of sales that the industry has lost in the domestic market vis-a-vis the quantum that we've lost in the export market as well between this lockdown period?
See, if you look at it, our exports and domestic, so exports is around 30. Last year we did $34 billion. So it was already down compared to the $36 billion that we did in the previous year, right? Because we lost quite a bit of March, and the China business started getting affected from February itself. And since China is a large part of the business, so our business was already, I would say, 10% down compared to the previous year. And this year we guesstimate the business to be down 20% compared to last year.
Okay.
So that's the loss that we expect. If you look at it just in terms of months, we've lost one quarter. So we generally have two buying seasons, right? You have Mother's Day and you have Christmas. Those are the two main buying seasons for all the export markets. And then in China, you have the Chinese New Year. In India, you have Akshay Tritiya and Diwali. So in India, you've lost Akshay Tritiya. In China, you've lost Chinese New Year.
Yes.
And in US, Europe, you've lost Mother's Day. So one whole buying season has gone. So we'll only have now Christmas and the later part of the year, weddings in India, Diwali, that time hopefully when things start coming back. So we're expecting business to be down 20% compared to last year, in answer to your question.
Right. So the festivals that we are talking of as well, the wedding season that could be around the corner as well for the Indian markets, do you think we will have the capability, and do you think the consumers will have the liquidity, which will be, with what we will be able to recoup the lost business, or do you think we will not be able to match the previous year growth numbers?
No, no, growth for sure will not happen. I wouldn't, be correct to say that. I don't think growth will happen this year for sure. There'll be a drop in volume and even a drop in value. So I think both will happen. A lot will depend on, I guess, the government in India, on what kind of stimulus package do they give, and whether that package reaches the ultimate beneficiary. So we've had some announcement, like, even yesterday, and the Prime Minister himself said 20 lakh crore. So I guess if they touch, all the sections of society, whether it's the farmers, whether it's MSME, the larger corporates, banking industry, real estate, gems and jewelry, if they are able to impact everyone with the stimulus, then I think yes, buying will happen post Diwali. But if for some reason it doesn't really percolate down, then we may have a challenge come Diwali. So
Right.
difficult to answer that right now. Let's wait for all the packages to
So,
come
so,
out.
so in terms of the packages as well, where do you think that the government would have placed the gems and jewelry sector? Because that was one of the sectors which has already been ruling under pressure. Uh, do you think it will be on the priority list?
See, we are hoping it's on the priority list. Let's I'll rephrase that. We're really hoping that it's on the priority list for a variety of reasons. One is we are a large export industry,
Mm.
so we still earn close to $40 billion of foreign exchange for the country. So one is that we employ 5 million people. One important point, I think, for all your viewers is
Mm.
employment which our industry generates is non-agrarian. So our industry typically doesn't need doctors and engineers.
Mm.
But if you take agriculture family in India, in any district, in any village, generally he'll have 2, 3 sons, and one or two of them will be tilling the farm, and one son is sent to the city. He's generally 10th pass or 12th pass, and finds difficult to get jobs. So we are one of the few industries who is able to absorb these youngsters, and they become diamond cutters, polishers, gemstone
Correct.
cutting, polishing, jewelry industry. So it's a industry which is able to employ the not so educated youth. That's one. And secondly, we are earning foreign exchange for the country. So we are really hoping that, and the government has been, see, if you look at it, we don't have one diamond mine, nor do we have one gold mine, but we are the largest diamond exporter in the world. And it is because of the friendly government policies over the last 40, 50 years that without one diamond mine, we actually became the experts in diamond cutting and polishing. And it's probably the only manufacturing industry which actually is the world number one, where China has not been able to even come close to us, or even Thailand is not close to us. So we are hoping that the government looks at us positively. If you especially look at the MSME definition, which they did yesterday, and so that, because our industry, the value of the product is very high. So what happens is that in the 10 to 50 crore definition, okay, I would say 60, 70% of our industry goes over there, well, over that value. So we used to be MSMEs till yesterday. Today we're not MSME
Correct.
because the value of diamonds is high. So you're actually a small company in the diamond world. But now, according to the new definition, so let's see. We are hoping that there is a package which is specially
So,
for our industry
right.
and
So,
takes
what is
care
the
of the
biggest
pain.
so what is the biggest wish, I mean, the top on the priority in terms of the wish list that the gems and jewelry sector is asking the government? What could be the top two on the priority list that the government should consider?
I would not have top two. I'll break it up into again different parts. So what the diamond industry needs, okay, because we have diamonds, we have
Correct.
jewelry, we have colored stones, so we have, like, though we have gems and jewelry,
Mm.
but every
Correct.
industry has a little you know different need. So the common need is banking.
Mm.
So obviously, when you're looking at banking, we're really hoping that this MSME definition is looked at, because with the subvention that we had earlier, that made us competitive with the other exporting nations. Now, if we have to pay the Indian rate of interest, which is between 9 to 12, 13%, then basically the export industry becomes unviable. Okay. So we have to look at one is the interest rate and how we are able to avail some kind of export benefit which helps us compete in the global world. So we were competitive as of yesterday. Now we're not competitive.
Correct.
So that's the interest part. Second is if you look at just challenges again on the banking side. So obviously we're going to need extensions on our packing credit, post shipment credit, repayment of gold loans. So the government gave an extension for 90 days,
Mm.
but I guess that's not going to be enough because we're still in lockdown.
Right.
So one is lockdown. So look at it from the businessman's point of view. We are expected to pay salaries. We are expected to pay interest, uh, and we are still in lockdown.
Yeah.
so
So,
so how long can that be viable? So
right.
that's the challenge on the banking side.
Right.
Long-standing demand of the industry has already been on the duty side. So on with 12.5% duty on
Mm.
gold and 7.5% duty on diamonds, those are the highest duties in the world. So imagine if you look at gold in India, where the highest tax gold rate globally.
Correct.
So that's not something that anyone's going to be very,
Right.
enthused about. So we're really hoping that because the higher the duty rate, the more the smuggling,
Correct.
and that makes it more difficult for honest business people to survive. Because we have, borders through which metal does come in. So we are hoping that the government looks at reducing duties on diamonds and gold, which has been a long-standing demand of the industry. And then you look at jewelry manufacturing. So we have the SEZ policies, which were made, the many years back, right? And they have not had any reform again since many years. So, there are actually a lot of foreign companies who would like to start operations in India, but they are unable to do so because of our SEZ policies. So there is no tax benefit left. Transfer of property is very difficult. If you start a factory in SEZ, you cannot sell in the DTA area. So there's all kinds of challenges. We've made several representations, and we're hoping that there is something done on the manufacturing side. So if there's something done on not something, actually, it's very specific what we need
Correct.
on the
Correct.
banking side, what we need on the duty and taxation side, and what we need in terms of reforms on SEZ policy.
Mm.
So
Mm.
if all that is done, then yes, it's makes it viable for our industry to survive and thrive in India. But otherwise, it's very challenging.
Right. It is challenging as well. And now, if you have to take the liquidity crunch that consumers are looking at, the way gold prices are moving, Colin, is unbelievable right now. Do you think that's something which is going to impact the consumption side of demand? Because yes, everyone is moving to gold as a safe haven, and that's one of the reasons why we're seeing this kind of an uptick that's coming in. But from the consumption point of view, which is also really important, do you see COVID impact on consumption of gold, and that's something which is going to be major?
See, again, like I told you earlier, it will affect the volume. But value wise, on the gold side, especially because the gold rate has also gone up and the rupee also devalued,
Correct.
and plus duties were increased. So gold in India, is at a very decent price, I would say today. And come Diwali, if the world economy continues the way it is, it will be higher. So if you were a consumer in India and if you're looking at gold from not only wearing a beautiful piece of jewelry, but even the investment point of view, it's a great investment
Correct.
because it's going to continue to go up. So I think from that standpoint, I don't see the gold business getting maybe affected that much. Yes, volume will come down, but since the value has gone up, at least sales for most jewelers won't be that significantly down.
And so, how much more value appreciation are you expecting in terms of gold, as well as if you have to consider diamonds as well for the consumers?
See, again, it's a tough question to answer. don't hold me to it. But if gold rate is at 1700 today and the rupee is approximately 75, then, and as I told you earlier, that so there are many uncertainties today,
Correct, correct.
right? I mean, everything's uncertain. But if the world economy continues like this, and if it's a long U-shaped recovery, then gold should see, northward of $2,000.
Okay.
Okay. So, but if this stimulus package of, our government in India really
Hmm.
kicks off and it works, and the rupee strengthens, okay, then that would have, so, we have the
A different
rupee
equation comes on.
dynamic and we have the dollar gold price dynamic. So let's see. But having said that, I think it's only going to go up. It won't go down for sure, because oil is also, at an all-time low.
All time low.
The dollar also, America has its own issues. So keeping all that in mind, and with all the central governments globally also looking at gold at a safe haven, consumers looking at gold as a safe haven, I think consumption will go up globally, not only in India. So
Right,
in the long term again.
right.
I
A,
don't know what
a lot
happens.
of moving parts coming in there.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts.
Correct. What is the sense that you have with regards to the export receivables? Because we've been hearing from a lot of people that the export receivables have been stuck. Is that having an impact on the working capital, or do you think it's already started to come out? The government is looking at it.
No. So, okay. Export receivables are going to be late for sure, because most of the world, like we discussed earlier, is in lockdown.
Mm,
So only the parts which have opened up, and where there is demand, fresh demand coming in, customers are able to make payments, and they want new goods, either diamonds or jewelry or whatever. But where the lockdown still exists, I guess payments is going to be an issue. So we're looking at our receivables coming between 90 to 180 days, with a delay of 90 to 180 days.
mm,
On the outer side, it will be maybe 180 and maybe 90 days. So that's what we are seeing, at least on the receivable side. In terms of what we need from the government and banks, is some kind of interest moratorium rebate, and on the government side would be some help from RBI, allowing that to happen. So that's what we'll need, because we will need fresh working capital while our old receivables are still to come in, and that's the challenge for liquidity. And that's why everyone has a liquidity crunch, because your payments haven't come in, and how do you avail of new finance? So how
mm.
do you pay salaries? How do you keep your factory? How do you get started again? So that's the challenge, and we're still waiting for some kind of policy over there.
Right, right. And what's the status with regards to where manufacturing goes? Because polishing and processing rough diamonds and gems, that's something where units, the information that we pick up is they have not been shut down. Because if they are shut down as well, again, it will lead to huge unemployment. So how are you dealing with that? Is it that the working hours have cut down, the shifts have reduced, or maybe shifts have increased and working hours have cut down?
See, right now again, in Maharashtra, I'm sure the permission that we have is to open 10% of our units in Bombay.
Mhm.
Okay, so only 10% of the work strength will start. So we don't need to do any shifts or anything, because it's only 10% of your factory which is permitted to start in the first place. So actually, as we speak, some of the first units are starting today, and some 100 factories should start in the next few days. Okay, so but that's only at 10% strength. So we don't have the issue of the shift or anything of that sort. Most of India is at 33% strength. So again, we don't have that challenge right now. Okay, on starting and with social distancing and everything, because anyways you're only allowed 30% of your work strength. Once we get back to full strength, then I guess what most of the industry will have to do is work in two shifts to take care of the social distancing norms, unless they have infrastructures which can permit them to keep the spacing and manage in one shift. So there'll be a very, I think, very small number which would have that kind of space in India, because
Correct.
everyone has compact factories and offices. So I guess generally it's going to be two shifts. Uh, See, I think some amount of attrition anyways happens every year. So I guess what most companies will do is maybe not replace that attrition. right? Unless position is desperately needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I guess that will happen for sure. Uh, the migration, which has been very popular over the last 4 weeks, has definitely happened. So I guess there's going to be some amount of workers, both men and women, which may not come back to the city, right? Who's going to be now staying in their village only, or wherever, whichever state they originally come from. So I think there's going to be some amount of that. So the migration with attrition will anyways reduce the pain which companies are going to have on due to the loss of volume. So say if
Correct.
your business is 20%, 25% down this year, right? So I think those two factors will take care of a lot of that problem anyways. Having said that, I think time will tell, whether this the stimulus package works and the economy comes back quickly. So the quicker things come back, I guess the easier it is for the entrepreneur to decide on what to do going forward. Right now, I can tell you, Hiral, anyways, everyone's in lockdown. So
Correct.
nobody is really able to, decide or do or think of what to do.
Right. So overall, again, for export destinations, UAE, US, Hong Kong, China, these are the major markets for India as well. Now, what happens with the trade shows? Because for the gems and jewelry sector, again, especially if you look at diamonds, the trade shows are of utmost importance as well. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Hong Kong International Diamond Gem and Pearl Show 2020 was postponed to May. You even had the International Jewelry Show in Hong Kong that has been rescheduled to May. I'm sure none of us will, I mean, no one will be able to attend those. What is the way out for these kind of trade shows then?
See, the trade shows this year, I don't think anything will happen till September, October. Okay, so most of so Vegas has been postponed, Hong Kong show's been postponed,
Mm,
Basel's been cancelled, Vicenza may or may not happen. The IIJS, the India Jewelry Show, will also
correct.
happen only towards the end of the year or early next year. So what I guess all of us are looking at, and maybe this time in the lockdown at home has given all of us ample opportunity, is looking at virtual B2B exhibitions.
Mm,
So just like we're doing this webinar,
correct.
there's actually a lot of solutions which are pretty cool, and I think will help the industry in learning how to do business virtually. So there's a lot of solutions which helps you, for example, even magnify your diamond and give the customer the same experience, and the same thing on the jewelry side. So we've already done a few virtual exhibitions where it's like speed dating, where the buyer and seller are meeting each other. So that's already started, and I think it's going to get bigger and larger and better, in the next couple of quarters, because that's how all of us will, fortunately or unfortunately, have to learn to do business.
Yeah, I think technology will be at the forefront. I think
Yeah,
across sectors. Another thing is work from home is something which is now picking up steam as well,
yeah,
especially amongst different sectors. So I think it is going to be a new India, rejuvenated India,
yeah,
and just that reforms and all these social norms that need to come at play as well.
yeah, agree.
Right. All right, Colin. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for sharing those insights. Great
Thank
advice
you.
that we've picked up for the sector as a whole. Once things open up, we will come back to you as well to understand what's the kind of difference the policies have made to the sector, and what would be the revival plan as well from here on over the next 12 to 18 months. But thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.